Welcome back to the Critical Fools podcast. This is episode 42. Before we get started, just want to call out that we were on a hiatus for about 3 months. We had
But we're back.
we had a lot of personal stuff to go through, logistics and just
in terms of moving for both of us as well. So yeah, but we're back.
This
and more
week-
consistent.
yeah. We'll definitely get back on the horse here. This week, we're going to be discussing a film titled First Reformed, a 2017 film directed by Paul Schrader, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He's, I think, famous for writing. He's famous for a lot of screenplays. So I know he did Taxi Driver and some other films that are well known. This film is definitely my pick, and I know that it's a film I enjoyed a lot. Basically, it opens up with a reformed pastor. He was in a military chaplain. This character named Ernest Toller, and it just starts off with him kind of the backdrop is he's the leader of this Calvinist church, right? I forgot the name actually. It's been a while since I've seen it. And you notice that he doesn't have many practitioners, but he starts becoming very close to this couple, right? Michael
it's Dutch Reformed Church, by the way.
Okay, Dutch Reformed Church. Thank you. And he starts becoming close to this couple. Michael, a husband, and Mary is the wife.
Oh.
And we'll get through big plot points and themes, but through the story, I just want to wrap up the intro. Through the story, we learn a lot about his character, a lot of stuff about existentialism, a lot of deeper thoughts, and also environmentalism, but church corruption and stuff. And I think the character, I think the focus is this main character that is such a fascinating, because I think often we lose track. Great films, in my opinion, really tackle the human condition, and this is definitely a film that does that. I'm curious to get what your initial thoughts on the backdrop and what you thought.
So just real quick, it was actually called First Reformed Church. It's in upstate New York, in Snowbridge, New York. It was a pretty interesting film, so I just need a preface. I might be a little biased for this film than I normally would be, because I'm actually a pretty big Ethan Hawke fan. I like him in most of the movies. And the first movie I ever saw him was in Training Day, which is a fantastic movie, in my opinion. But aside from that, it was a really interesting movie that tackled a lot of existentialism. And I'm trying to remember exactly all of the themes. I thought it was just interesting because I would say both grew up Catholic, and so sort of the theme of Catholic guilt has definitely been I would say talked about, I guess, throughout our lives in a way. And this film really tackles that as well. So overall, it was an interesting story. And I thought Ethan Hawke did a great job in his role as the pastor who's struggling with a lot of demons.
Yeah. Let's get through some of those demons, right? So one of the things we learned early about him is that he was married. He had you would consider a good life, right? Married, was a military guy. He from the outside looking in, you would say living, I don't want to say the American dream, but a productive citizen life, right? And then he reveals to Michael that his son had served in Iraq, because it was a military family, and he had died. And that kind of huge events, and that's in life in general, right? Huge events do this to people. It changed everything for him and his wife, and they weren't together anymore. And then he decided to, go into the, exit the military and do where he's doing now. And, he also he has alcoholism issues. I could argue he has intimacy issues, because, he starts, it's revealed that he's having relations with I don't know, what was the character called? She was working with the church,
Mary.
but she wasn't.
You were talking about the lady, and he just cut it off.
Yeah. But she clearly wanted something more and to help him. I mean, she had her own issues, but
it's never going to happen.
Yeah, he cut her off. But I put that, maybe I'm older now and wiser, but I put that into intimacy issues, because he doesn't do, he cuts it off, but you can tell that they were both messed up people in some ways, and and he didn't. I don't think he handled it in a very healthy way.
He was more messed up and I
Yeah.
think he just felt guilty towards his dead wife for wanting to continue. Like a lot of the one of the big themes, like I already talked about, was guilt. Like that was
Yes.
a huge theme in this movie, and so I don't think he was strong enough to overcome the things that he felt guilt towards.
Yes, I definitely agree. And like he has all this like, and so what's crazy is that like, not crazy, but I think why I like this film a lot is that it humanizes we tend to lionize like historical figures or role models or priests in general. That's you
Hmm.
and I can speak to that, and we forget that they're human too, and like they're also having a human experience, and like maybe obviously you're hoping your priest has more together than Toller does, but he's going through a lot, and like he is also trying to be like a voice to Michael and Mary. Like it's
I mean,
you want
I would say there's religious leaders that are far worse than Toller. You can
yes.
watch the movie Spotlight to get more insight on that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's like a different like type of poison. I meant like priests who are just like they're trying to do their best, but do they have the tools to do that? Right? It's like having a bad psychiatrist. Like, are they really like should they really be helping you when they gotta sort themselves out a little bit? Like,
Oh, sure, sure.
but I'm curious what you thought of like Toller as a character of his dark past, of like his human like I don't want to say I guess frailties. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's just like any other person within his flock, and that like he deals with a lot of the same issues, if not more so than I'm sure a lot of his practitioners. So I think the director, now I'm blanking on his name, did a good job really humanizing him in the film because everyone struggles through a lot of different things, and in particular, he was tough for him to. I think his wife died, right? But definitely his son was killed in Iraq, and he really he tried coping with these things because I don't think the church was enough for him. He coped with it, unfortunately, through alcoholism.
Wait, no, did the son die? I thought the wife. I don't know if maybe she ended up
Oh
dying,
no,
but I thought
They
they
divorced, right?
divorced. Yeah,
They
because
divorced. Yeah,
she blamed him specifically
yeah,
him,
yeah.
and this happens a lot
That's
with
right.
tragic
That's
events.
right.
Right? She blamed him specifically for her son's death, and so they could not be. I get it, right? That can't be a marriage anymore, right? Like if you're going to be blamed specifically for your child dying,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that actually is a theme that I don't know if we'll do this movie, but that's another theme that happens in another great film, Manchester by the Sea.
Never seen it.
Yeah, that's another good film. But it's a similar theme, and where one is blamed for everything, and like it's a tough watch. I will say maybe we'll do it, but it's a tough watch. But the because what I learned from both this film and that film is that it's even if it's a coping mechanism, it's easier to move on with your life if you can have. It goes back to a French philosopher, Rene Girard, where it's sometimes what people need is that scapegoat. And like you need to be able to say it was their fault, and I can then move on. And so like I think when this kind of like happened, like these tragic events happen, especially with couples and their children, it's easy to be the one that says it's your fault, and then like you need healing, and then you move on, and you get remarried and have another kid. But that parent or that person that has all the guilt, like you said, a big theme of this film, that's hard to unwind. And you just, as we see with Toller, but I think we also see in that film, which I'm going to do a little mini spoiler in the sense of like, not like specifically the plot, but like the theme, it's hard to move on when like you are the point of like, and you also feel maybe you believe it too, that is your fault. Yeah.
So, what did you think of the overarching? I guess so there's a lot of like little themes going on here, but they use sort of the idea of environmentalism and stewardship for the earth as sort of the big backdrop. What did you think
Yeah.
of the director's choice for that in this film?
I think it's very like contemporary. I will say, like, it makes sense, to tie existentialism with our mental frailty, right? Like, if you believe, and many do, like the doomsday scenarios, if we don't like control fossil fuels in the environment, like the human population might collapse, in the next 50 years, and like resources might be scarce. We might be living in this dystopian future, right?
Worst case
And,
scenario, but yeah.
yeah. And so, which is what leads you to the existential rot, right? Like
It's worst case scenario.
Yeah. And like Michael brings this up often in his conversations with Toller, right? That like, how can I think he has a great line. One of my
What
favorite.
was the quote? Yeah, they had a couple good good quotes in
Yeah.
this movie.
Yeah, there's a quote that is my biggest takeaway from the film, which I'll get to the end. But but he starts saying like, how can I bring a child into this world when that child might not like live to have his own children, or something like that. Like,
That's a good quote.
And yeah, like Toller he's taken aback because he's just like, basically Michael, even though he ends up committing suicide, he leaves a big imprint on Toller because I think it gets him thinking about his own choices, his own existentialism, and the choices he'll make later in the film. And I do want to talk about the ending later, but I think the big backdrop is like the questions that I think we've talked about in the past in our podcast, but like we don't often like bring it up all the time. Is that like we it's a weird reality we live in, right? Like to live day to day, to enjoy life, we have to kind of like let go of like what we don't understand, like the big picture, like why are we here? If the Big Bang is real, like what started the Big Bang? Like that stuff can like overwhelm the mind, right? But when you go down this existential path, like which I've done, you start feeling overwhelmed, and I think that's what happens to Toller. I'm curious what you thought about it, but I think that was the purpose of the theme for the characters, but also for the film as a message about like, we're human, right? And like we wonder like what is beyond, and like what is the future, what is the whole point of it all sometimes.
Well, yeah, I think most people go through a lot of those questions, right, at some point in their lives or another. And you can tell
well, some people don't ever. So
I said, well, a lot do, right? I mean, that's even why there's philosophical writings on, and that's why there's even a whole school of thought on existentialism.
Yep.
Right, and that's why religion's such a big part of like societies. And granted, there's a lot of people who are, I would say not religious or spiritual, but it's still, for most countries around the world, it's still a big part of like most societies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can definitely tell with Toller, he's sort of disillusioned. Like he doesn't seem like he's. I would say he's more like disillusioned with the church. Because he's not really like, you can even see the congregation's like very small, especially compared to like the mega church with Cedric the Entertainer's character, right? And so yeah, I think he's kind of like, what's the point? Or you're not even sure if he kind of like believes in God or if he's losing faith. And I think Michael sort of gives him some sort of purpose within the sort of the cause for environmental protection, and so that's sort of what leads him to get some like renewed energy, I would say. It was kind of interesting seeing Michael's character, because like there are conversations between Michael and Toller and Mary. They had some very interesting dialogues.
Yeah, I mean, Michael to me represents the type of person that goes down the path of a mix of nihilism and existentialism, where at the end of the day, what they ended up realizing, which is a logical conclusion.
He's a person who spent way too long on some dark internet boards.
I mean, no. Let me finish my thought. But he's a person that goes far down the rabbit hole of like, in the end, there is no meaning, and like, and combined with the fact that I don't have the power. Because his heart is good intention, right? Like he comes across as a character that like wants to like help the world. Like his will is that like, they do his funeral at like a toxic waste dump, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like he is very aware, but like he feels powerless, and he believes because of that powerless, he believes there's nothing can be done, right? It's over. And right. So then he ends up committing suicide. And I think there's a lot of people who, either life events or just, like you said, going down that rabbit hole, it's hard to unwind yourself from that. And I think the counterpoint is like reading like a Dostoevsky or something like that, where like, even when it feels hopeless, there is still hope, which again, like I don't want to give too much of that, but like there are counterpoints. You can look at religion too in the Bible, but like I said, it's everything. Okay. I'll use it now. My favorite quote of this movie is like, wisdom is holding two contradictory truths in your mind. Like they're both not wrong. So then how do you move forward with that? And that's one of the big questions posed in this film. And each character does it differently. Toller does it differently than Michael. Mary does it differently than those two. And then there's the characters that don't care. They're just living the day to day, which is the church administration, which we could get into too. That's a whole other topic, but that dirty corruption. But anyways, the financial corruption, financial terrorism, as I call it. But but it's
You're not the one who coined that. Calm down.
I did not coin that, but I must reiterate it.
Mm-hmm.
I always say like I regurgitate a lot of the thoughts. I have very few original ideas, but they're good usually. But I have very few original ideas. But I think that quote is the powerful mess. The other powerful, if the theme is existentialism and like, you know, our human frailty, then like the line that encapsulates how we tackle that is that line that is said in that conversation between Toller and Michael.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. I'm kind of curious. We're going to be jumping around a little bit in this film, right? Because there's a lot of interesting.
The plot isn't as important as the thematical stuff.
Yeah, it was just like there's a lot that kind of happens. What did you? I'm trying to remember who was the oil tycoon, or do you know who I'm talking about? Who was the businessman?
The bald guy, right?
Yeah, what was his name? I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember. I know. I started with a B, I think.
Balk, right?
Balk, yeah.
Yeah, Balk. What did you think of his character?
I mean, what is these like bait me questions? I thought his character represented. I'm gonna do a really good answer here. I thought his character represented what he needed to represent, which was like that cynical, you know, for-profit,
materialistic.
Basically,
what is the antithesis of what religion is supposed to bring to a person?
Yeah, I think actually what's the predominant philosophy of our today's culture of like, how do I
materialism?
How do I not just materialism, but the essence to me of materialism, now that I've been thinking deeply about it over the last many years, is that like it's about like how you live the greatest life you can live, right? Like how can I get the most, you know, money? Because in the end, like what's the for-profit for, right? It's for your own, you know, like it feeds like that bigger ego, right? Or I forgot which ego it feeds. But like, so because that guy, like he's only worried about like the profit motive, right? Like there's nothing else that he's worried about, right? It's very clear that like, and again, this is Randian and there's a whole moral philosophy about it, but like he thinks he's doing the world good by it's actually, they call it like the other the flip side of this. I was listening to an interview with a crypto CEO, and he was saying like his goal is to make, it's like Chamath, goal is to make the most money possible, then donate it all. That's how he's going to do good in the world. It's called like altruistic. It's something called, it's altruistic. There's a term for it even, altruistic something, but it's like the philosophy of like, the only power I have is to make the most money possible. That's what I can control, and then I can give it away or use mechanisms to use that money for good. We could debate if that's like legit and like that's really gonna work, but that's what I kind of thought of that character. That like I didn't think he was like evil, but he was definitely something that was created from our modern society of like, you know, I need to make, you know, more money. I need to make the right financial moves, and that's what matters. And the church is just a mechanism for that. I'm curious what you thought of him.
Yeah, I mean, I would say his character is pretty self-explanatory, right? He's just like a business tycoon who donates money, and he gets irritated when there's bad publicity when his sort of motives are questioned by the religious leaders whom he is giving money towards, right? Because he's basically saying, "I'm buying you off. Don't question me." In a way, that's what he tells Toller. But what did you?
Before you jump into that question,
do you know where I'm going?
I'm catching on to these baiting questions, and I'm not going to just give the satisfaction of Chris's stream of consciousness.
I like the stream of consciousness. That's what makes the pod go. All the best pods have stream of consciousness rants, right? All the ones we listen to have them. That's even laugh. You can even look at Tim Dillon's, right? So that's all his podcast is just one giant stream of consciousness rant. But anyway, I digress. What did you think of, because Toller is introduced to Balk through this character, what did you think of the character played by Cedric the Entertainer, who had, I'm blanking on his name.
He's the admin. He's the guy that like...
Joel Jeffers. He's not the admin. He's a pastor at the megachurch.
Oh, yeah. But he's like the guy that...
Right, he's a pastor of the megachurch that basically helps fund the historic First Reformed Church. They're basically like sister churches. Right, because Toller wouldn't be there if not for the large megachurch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I remember the character, yeah, because Toller does trust him and confides in him his reservations, but he tells him kind of like we have a reality to live with and we have to abide by it. He probably represents the people who are probably most like us. Like we want to do the good in the world, but like
I don't. Are you sure that he wants to do the good in the world? I'm not so sure.
not like out of his way to do good in the world,
Yeah.
but like kind of like how do I describe it? Like that okay, I think better the example will explain it, I think. In my mind, it's kind of like the people who like, they're good citizens, they do their work, they comply with the law, they try to like, say the right things, they try to do the right things supposedly, and then they, do a little donation to, save the sea life.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that character represents the essence of our culture of like,
I'm in a Cedric the Entertainer.
Yeah, character. Cedric the Entertainer character. They're like, I do what I can in the system.
Sure. Yeah, cog.
But yeah, basically, he's not like infallible, and like he does not side with Toller. But he's not. I don't see him as like a guy that's like the difference between him and Bulk is that Bulk does seem like a bit of a.
Well, he's a corporatist, right?
Corporatist, Bulk, and
right?
You can also argue that maybe he's not always well, and like his intentions are like really like.
He's one of these people that believes capitalism is what will be the most moral and ethical way forward, right? And I mean, there's.
Well,
some justification for that. Cedric is more, and I think there's more my issue with religion nowadays, and especially a lot of these megachurches you see sprawling out of Protestantism, is they're often tied with sort of like big donors, so they become in a way just wrapped in with this sort of corporatist mindset where you need newer things. I mean, you and I both went to, and we weren't raised Protestant, but we were raised Catholic, right? And I'm sure and have gotten things from going to elementary school, Catholic elementary schools, Catholic high schools, constantly asking for more money, needing more things, and it's like at the end of the day, is that really what the root of religion is supposed to be? Is that what?
Yeah.
In your biblical scriptures, is that what Jesus advocated for? No.
Yeah.
He talked about the simple life in a way.
Yeah, and with the Catholic Church, it's a multi-century corruption. I think the issue I had with Protestants when I went deep diving there, like during the pandemic, the prosperity gospel stuff is very toxic. Like they really tie like
Bill Holstein or Joel Holstein.
Yeah, because I will say that like the Catholic Church is very corrupt and it gives access to those with money, and the money has corrupted. But I don't see from our like.
Here's the issue with prosperity gospel. If they're saying if you believe in A, you will get B.
Yes.
And what's weird about that to me is, well, if you don't get B, then all of a sudden do you start losing faith in A? Is that really what the root of it is? It's a little weird.
And also, what's most dangerous is what
I grew up with on one side of my family. I won't go into too much detail. A lot of Protestantism, and it wasn't so much that sort of prosperity gospel, but I heard some of it growing up, and I always thought it was a little strange.
It's especially from like your background, it's definitely going to seem very strange. I listened to like a few lectures, and what I think the most dangerous idea was like if you're poor, that means you're a sinner.
Yeah.
But if you're rich,
you're doing something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's very twisted because sometimes, we've met people who have become homeless or they're poor for whatever reasons, and it's not because like God hates them. Like it's a very
people who are less fortunate, which is so bizarre to me because your religious leader, like the core, the core person within the religion, right? Jesus, what did he spend most of his time with in the books? It was with the prostitutes or tax collectors, right? That's why I always found this interpretation a little sordid in a way.
Yeah, it's the power of interpretation because like I remember one guy saying like Jesus was attacking the tax like the money merchants because like your work should be yours. It's like, whoa, that's an interesting.
Say that again. He was
like basically, that remember that parable where Jesus like he taxed the money changers because they're profiting off the church. Like the interpretation this pastor had was that like Jesus was doing that because like no institution should take your money. Your money is your wealth is what God has provided for you because of your faith for him, and like nobody should. So basically it's like their libertarian take on like taxation and also
okay,
it's really fine, weird. It doesn't make sense. Like that's what I was saying. It doesn't.
I mean, you're free to have any interpretation, but the interpretation is not necessarily the right one.
Ooh, hot take. Yeah.
A lot. My issue with this is a lot. Because I've read the Bible, right? Read a lot of books. I'm not saying I have the right answer, but oftentimes what you hear with a lot of religious leaders is they fail to take into account sort of the historical context of the time with which these books were written, and there were some societal reasons for like some things and some of the stories that were put into these books 2,000 years ago, right? And what what people back then would take away from it and what we may take away from it today are different because they might mean different things to them.
True. I have a little add on of that, but I would say like the more important thing I've learned listening to these pastors is that this happens with everybody, right? Like you see what you want to see. So like we can both read the same passage and be like, oh, we agree because we have the same mental framework, and they'll read it and be like, oh, this is, and you could debate whether he's stretching it, but like I could see that he's reading a passage that I've read many times and he's just interpreting it like a way different way. And it just reminds me of like I know that show you recommended me the premise, but I forgot what I was gonna make here. It had to do with like interpretations, but like I kind of forgot the point. But basically, maybe we'll come back.
Oh, did it have to do with episode 4 with the lady who reads the hate comment? Is that where you're going with this?
No, I kind of forgot. Hold up. I hate when this happens. I need like mental bookmarks. I need to like know how like just like shuffle away those good ideas. But like I forgot what it was, but it had to. Yeah, it was. But it related to like the fact that like it's, you know, you hear what you want to hear, you read what you want to read, basically. Like you're in your head.
Or was it with the last episode with the guy presenting on his idea of his innovative product?
That was a good one. That's my favorite one, actually. But nah, maybe it'll come back to me. But it does. It like to move on from the prosperity gospel stuff. Like I find the idea is very dangerous just because of that regard. I think it's too easy just to damn somebody because they're poor. Yeah.
Of course, it's also like like a lot of life's or your position in life is pretty circumstantial, right? So it's not always just your own doing. You could be. The issue with that is weird, right? It's like, people. You could have been born to like a mom who was, a drug addict, brought up in horrible circumstances. It's like even if you read Mike Tyson's book, some people criticize or bash the dude, right? And I'm not saying he's perfect, but like you read his childhood, it's like the dude was growing up in. He would say that him and his brothers would sleep in abandoned buildings, right? And they didn't know it's like, okay, like you're gonna say that he's like a sinner because he grew up poor like that. Like this is a little silly. Like when you sort of oversimplify things to that degree. And it's not like Jesus chose a life of luxury, right? Which is why I find that insane.
Yeah, I think often what I've learned as I get older is that people they give themselves the stories that make their life make sense. So like when I hear like when this pastor speak about like prosperity gospel, to me, I don't get a view of the crowd, but I imagine in the crowd they're loving to hear this because they want to feel like when they like move up, they don't have to feel guilty about it.
Of course, we know several people who would probably love this type of doctrine. And I think you know who exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because it justifies their sort of view and positioning of the world.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Moving on. Any other? So we're at that character.
Yeah. Oh, so my point with essentially the entertainer. Yeah, it was more my critique with religion. It's like they've kind of gotten away of the roots. They become more corporate, kind of like a corporation in a way. I don't think that's good. I don't think that helps people towards a better spiritual way of life.
I agree. I think a lot of, you already know my thesis, so I'm not going to repeat them. But yeah,
I found it insane. Like one of my, like where I went to like elementary school was a Catholic elementary school. Yeah, they were constantly there. They got new. I remember they got new pews, right? And then 2 years later, they needed more raising money for other ones like seats. I'm like, what's wrong with the pews in the first place? Why aren't you raising money for like to help some of the poor kids in your community who are Catholic? Like, this is insane. Why do you need new seats when you just got them a couple of years back? Are they damaged? No, they're perfectly fine. It's just the priest wanted his new little toys. Sorry, I go on tangents because I find a lot of this stuff just unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like if I'm well aware of the fact that like if I was younger and I was attending our high school now, I mean, I wouldn't be able to actually. I'd probably be priced out. So it's too
It's not
expensive.
worth it.
Yeah, that's one. But also, like even if my parents wanted to, they wouldn't be able to write the check. So,
I'm telling you right now, Chris, it's not worth it.
but it's just crazy how things have evolved. But yeah, so I think okay. So moving on back to the movie, what did you think of that relationship between Toller and Mary? I thought that was
It
intriguing.
was interesting. I didn't really quite know what to make of it. I'm curious as to what your thoughts were.
So yeah, I do have some thoughts on this, why I asked.
All
But
right.
how I viewed it in my perspective is that I think it was one of those things where this happens to people where like I never got the sense from the characters that they were like they wanted to be lovers, but whatever that line between friends and lover is, they were there. Like, there
There's a
was
weird gray space.
this weird gray space where like they needed each other emotionally, but not as like, to be physical with each other. Because there was that scene I think that really tells
That
a lot, right?
was weird.
Yeah, where like
That
it
was
was
so
it was
bizarre.
it was very intimate, but not like how you and I would view like because I mean if I was in that kind of like first I wouldn't be in that situation, but like if I'm like there with a girl, like I'm gonna like
It was
do
just
the do
weird.
yeah do the like the real deed, not whatever that was. So to me, it reminded me a little bit of like when people say like emotional cheating. Not that like they were doing
Was that
that.
supposed to be symbolic? That wasn't even emotional cheating. I don't know what to call that.
No, I think I'm just connecting it to like the closest
It
real world
wasn't
example.
cheating because the husband's dead.
No, I don't think it was these two
Is
characters. I
it
mean,
cheating on the church?
no. I'm trying to just connect it to the closest example I know of because it was such a weird. I gotta give the film credit. I didn't know these kind of things could happen. It's fictional, but like the closest thing I can think of as a model is like when people say like emotional cheating, where you went to somebody else for all this emotional needs and support, and like you didn't come to your, let's say, husband or boyfriend or whatever or girlfriend. That was the closest model I could see. Because to your point, I had to think about it. I was just like, this is really weird, this relationship. Because first I thought, oh, they're just friends. He's just supporting her. And like, that happens. It then evolved into something weird, but it wasn't like, I couldn't say like it was like full on like, lover, Romeo and Juliet stuff. It was like in this middle that I was like, wow, this middle can exist maybe? Like, I don't think it can, but it was
No,
really weird for the movie to do that.
only in this film.
But at least the thought experiment exists because this film did it. So it threw me for a wind a little bit.
And it's not like you can see these people are asexual because they've had kids, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know
So
what was going on.
what I describe it as that weird gray area between lovers and friends. It's like whatever that line that is, those characters were there. Because it was like at times I thought, because I don't know if you thought this, I thought they were gonna get together or something, or like smash or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it was like, no, you get this weird ass scene that still throws me for loops. But yeah, I was curious to what you thought of that. I guess it was bizarre, right? Yeah.
I didn't know what to make of it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's the closest I got was that.
Yeah.
What about Mary by herself? Like that character specifically. What'd you think of her?
I felt bad for her just because it's really hard when you like have someone that is so far gone as Michael was in terms of his sort of like existential nihilism that there's nothing that she could do, and that's why she told her that she was like worried about her husband. But in the end, all of her worries, her like the child that they had, right? And Mary, that was not enough for Michael to keep on living.
I think there's a line.
I did feel bad for Mary.
There's a line in the movie. Doesn't she say like she thought maybe like the kid might change him? Yeah. There's a lesson there for the audience. Do never think that.
No. I think some people often think that like, especially when like marriages aren't working out, like certain things will change it. Like either getting married or having a kid. Like all of a sudden it's going to solve things, and it's not.
It's not.
It's not going to. I don't know if you saw the Abbott and Preach video that just got posted recently.
Which one? The Korean marriage?
Yeah, great clip.
It's on my watch list.
It was good. Preach went in a little bit about like sort of what it takes to make things work in a marriage, and so That's what I'm saying. Like it was too superficial of a reason to think that that was going to solve everything. In fact, it's just going to overcomplicate it more.
And that's what ended up happening, right?
Yeah.
And I think to the film's credit, like it doesn't try to over-explain it to you. It just because we know people that think like this, whether that's like I don't know, okay, I haven't seen the pregnancy example, but definitely like, oh, he'll, when we're together next year, still like when we're still in a relationship in like 2 years,
All of a sudden, 7 years, and then like I thought we were gonna get married. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
there were probably flags there you just didn't want to see.
Exactly. And then like you said, people think of marriage or the kid, or if we move. A lot of people say like, oh, if I move or if I get the new car, I get the new job, things will just change. They'll change.
Or it's gonna make you happier. Yeah.
I've heard this one like, oh, if they get the new job, they'll change. It's no. Yeah. So it's kind of like a thesis I've learned in my own life. It's kind of like you have to accept people for who they are, and if you're cool with that, pursue it. If not, like you gotta respectfully like just distance yourself. Yeah.
So what do you? Yeah. I was just gonna ask, what do you think of the last bit of the movie, the sort of like final scenes?
Yeah. So that's the one that's super interpretive because I had to think about it and even read online a little bit on some discussions. Like, puts on the vest, is gonna do Michael's mission basically, but like he has that weird makeout scene with Mary, and then like doesn't he like cut himself with like because he's also torturing himself like a martyr.
It's barbed wire, dude.
Yeah, barbed wire, and then I think but I think so. I don't know. I'm curious what you think. I'll say what I've read, and like maybe my interpretation. A lot of audience members think that like when he drinks the
fluid, going to.
Yeah, but some people say that like that after that scene is like some people interpret that scene as like in his head. Basically, a lot of people think that he just died. He drank it and died. A lot of other people say like that other scene happened and like he died like soon after because he was dying anyways because he has a stomach cancer. I don't know what to make of it. To be honest with you, I'm of the theory. I'm leaning towards like that last scene is in his head or in heaven or in some kind of
that would make a lot more sense
because like everything else kind of doesn't. Like, what was he gonna do? Make out with her, and then what? They're not gonna live. This movie did not give me at any point the interpret like the feeling that they're gonna live. They're gonna marry and tolerate and live happily ever after. So I was like, I think he died. I think he drank it, and I think everything else like the cup, like it's not like that's not reality. That's in a different world now. I agree with the audience. A lot of the audience or the audience members with that interpretation.
It makes a lot more sense because I didn't know what to make of that, but that makes.
No, I had to go on.
That's what I'm going with too.
Like I did not like. I was like, "What's going on here, dude?" Like
that was pretty wild because I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I gotta get credit.
I remember like being like, "What did I just watch?" That was like my initial reaction.
Yeah, no, I was the same because everything was kind of making sense. Like I was piecing it together with my interpretation, of course, and then I got to the final stretch and I was like, "What happened here?" Because it just ends. It doesn't just like explain it. It just ends, and I'm like, "Okay." So I actually had to like when I don't have answers. This is for our podcast listeners. When I don't have,
look it up, look theories up.
Yeah, I see discussions and like there's back and forth. Because some people say like no, like he didn't die. Like so other people say like he didn't die. He just put it down. The kissing is all in his head because it's like the last hurrah. You know how people have this like last like mental hurrah, and then he goes out and blows up. So he does die, but like it's not like some people think he dies like drinking it. Other people say he dies like.
But no one knows. I mean, it's pure speculation. We don't know.
Yeah, only the creator could tell you. But I think obviously good directors don't. They just say like they want the interpretation. They want the discussion. So, but both
that's
theories.
That's like when you had Schenectady, New York. They had so much interpretation there.
Yeah, of course. But both theories make sense to me. So like it's either one, right? Does he die like blowing up? But it looks like he dies. They all converge on like he dies. But does he die before or does he die after? So it's up to you. Mm-hmm. I'm leaning towards just the other way, but I don't know. His character never gave me the sense that he could just kill innocent people, but that maybe he got that far. How far does the road go?
Maybe.
Like Nietzsche says, you become the abyss if you stare long enough. So anyways, I guess we can get into final thoughts and ratings. But unless there's some other topic that you thought was important in this movie. But...
No, I think we're good. I think we can move on to that.
All right, so what did you think?
It's interesting because I didn't quite. That I didn't quite have like a clear interpretation of the ending, and so that was interesting. Makes me reevaluate a little. It was an interesting film, right? I think Ethan Hawke, like I said at the beginning.
Oh, he was great in this movie.
I'm biased. I love Ethan Hawke and like almost everything he's in.
Is it a hot take to say he's underrated?
I've been saying that for a while. Like he's an underrated actor to me. He's like one of my favorites, but I think he did a great job playing a very troubled priest, right? Who has a lot of demons that he's constantly trying to like fight and resolve with, and all while trying to lead his church, right? And so it was. I thought it was a great performance by him. It was. I'm trying to think who else did I think had a good performance. I don't know if I would say that Mary did. I think she did a good job, but I think the problem when you have such a great performance, I think he just outshined everybody else within the film. That was just me personally in terms of like an acting performance. But I thought the film overall, like there's nothing that I could point to that was necessarily bad about it. I thought that they had a lot of deep themes that they wanted to sort of tackle and touch upon, especially like existentialism, right? Sort of your interpersonal relationships. Will a kid sort of save like a marriage, or is that worth like living for? It was like they tried tackling a lot, and I thought that there was a lot that the director purposely wanted to leave sort of open for interpretation in this film, especially the ending, right? Because I was just, as we discussed, very confused by that. But I think you brought a little bit of clarity to that now. The one thing that still like bothered me was still the interaction before he prepares for that anniversary service, which is when Mary and Toller have some, I don't even know what you call it. I would call it an interaction that was just very weird and bizarre, but still, I don't know. It definitely did leave an impression of some sort. I thought it was interesting. I think my one critique, or the thing that got kind of annoying, was that they're being a little overly like preachy or nihilistic with the sense of having environmentalism be the backdrop. I mean, personally, I think that there's a lot more that we could be doing to save the planet. It's just, I don't know, maybe in today's like climate where like you see all the need for climate change and getting away from renewables and everything's environmentalism, it gets a little like shoved in your face. And so I don't know if that's necessarily a knock on the film. It's just my sort of bias and experience, just living in this world. So that would be kind of my one like sort of a knock, and that's just me. But I thought it was good overall. I'd give the film an 8.5.
Interesting. When you told me the score a while back, you said 8, but 8.5. Okay.
Well, that's because I didn't have interpretation for the ending. I was very confused.
8.5 is fair. All right, I guess it's my turn. So I'll clarify that my co-host here, when he first watched it, was like, "This is such a film that you would pick."
It is.
It is. Yeah, I agree. Like Ethan Hawke was great. I thought the cast was good, but he definitely, I mean, he was the cover of the film. Like he should be the star. So
yeah.
I thought actually underrated performance. I wish he had got more buzz for like awards and stuff. I thought playing this.
Yeah, he could have been best actor.
Yeah, complicated priest. Like, I mean, we seems like we give those awards to like whatever now. So I mean,
hot take.
But yeah, and I didn't feel the same way about the environmentalism. Like to your point, I do agree with you that it's a bit maybe overdone, but how they used it and it made sense for the story. They could have used something else if they wanted to, but
I wish they'd chosen sort of a different overarching theme for it. That's just me personally.
But
I see like it was very effective.
But I think the existential, like the exploration of his Toller's character was, I genuinely learned something, like, because he had frailties, he had anxieties, but he was still human. He still wanted to, be a positive person. Like he still wanted to do good, right? Like, I feel like people forget, like, I think they get so nihilistic and cynical that they forget that, like, we want to have connections. We want to like leave something meaningful behind, have meaningful relationships. I think, we were talking off the record where like I was telling you like these stories that were borderline inappropriate, but actually my main takeaway was like, how many meaningless interactions did you have just because you wanted to have like, let's just say a boys' night out. I'll use those kind of terms because it's a PC pod. When like like you said, like what people really want is like a meaningful relationship, like a real one, like one that's like a mix of friendship and where you care, they have the same values, you care about the actual other person, not just like, oh, I just want to get like this outcome, you know?
Mhm.
And I think it's harder than it seems because, you know, we're human and we see a lot of media through books or TV or whatever that tells us that it's not easy, even though we might think everybody has it figured out. And I go back to the quote that I love to say now, you know, like wisdom is holding two contradictory truths in our mind. And I'm going to do with a direct quote, hope and despair, right? Like you can't have a life without hope, without despair, right? Like, you know, they both have to exist. And like how you handle that defines who you are in many ways and how you interact with the world. And yeah, this film to me, I can't give it a 10 out of 10 because I think as a film, there's still some errors. Like, you know, I kind of agree with your like the environmentalism, but I think mainly, you know, I think one of the issues with the film is that like it can be kind of like convoluted. I feel like a viewer who is like maybe not as like they've watched a lot of films or thought about these things, they're just going to watch this movie like, I'm just confused, right? Like we get this a lot with remember New York Syndicate, right? Like I watched the film, I'm just confused, I don't know what it means, right? Like that. I do think there's an art, like I fully appreciate the film, but I think there is an art where you can distill something that's complicated into a movie and you hit that sweet spot. And that's where I would say like they could do that, it would have been a 10 out of 10 for me. But
John Malkovich.
Yeah, that was a good one. That sweet spot. I thought like I don't think I gave it a 10 out of 10 for different reasons, but I think American History X was a sweet spot, right? It's can be a very nuanced topic, but took it at a deeper level.
Burning.
You know, Burning as well. Like that, those are like very rare, right? So I can't hold it against this movie. And that, like, I don't want to say it's a bad movie, but I gave it a 9 out of 10 because of that. I think to be, you know me, I'm a hard grader, so to be 10 out of 10, like it's got to hit that perfect sweet spot. Like, and it's very tough for films like this to do that. But
another one that which I still will disagree with you to the death was Sound of Metal. Did it brilliantly.
I gave it a 9, dude. I watched that film and I was like, I called you. I remember I said like, this is your movie, dude.
Yeah,
this is your
movie. So good.
It's got music, which I know you're passionate about, and it's got like deeper.
Oh, meaning. Dude, it was an existential part. Oh man, no, it was brilliant. Like it was so unique.
It's got like unique premise, music. And I told you, I was like, I remember watching the trailer.
A little bit of existentialism there too.
Yeah. And I was like, I know you're gonna like this because I know you're into music more than I am. And like, if you even thought about that thought experiment, what if you lost your hearing slowly? That's painful, especially for an artist too. Like they even did it more.
Dude, Riz Ahmed, props to you, man. You did a fantastic job.
And the journey he went through to acceptance. Yeah. I will say it was a great movie, but I can't, like I said, I can't give it a 10 out of 10. I'm a hard grader. You love that. You wanted to give that like a 12 out of 10.
No, I did. It was so good.
You're like, how you not watch this film? People are gonna be like, what's this movie? It's not that good. You're gonna get triggered one day.
I'm shook, dude. I'm like, you guys are stupid.
That movie was okay. Like, it's not realistic. You're gonna be like,
I'd have to walk away. I have to walk away.
Would that ruin a first date for you? Oh yeah, like that movie. It was okay. It was okay.
That wouldn't. That's not a first date kind of movie.
No, just if it comes up. If it just comes up, you know, like for some reason.
I didn't realize Manchester by the Sea was, or Casey Affleck won Best Actor for it in 2016.
He did, yeah.
Wow. I gotta tell you, I watched that now. Sorry, I was just looking at Best Actors.
Yeah, I thought about picking that, but it's just our list is like so extensive. That movie is really good. I mean, it's a bit overrated too, but it's a solid movie. I know next week we're doing or next time we're doing Winter Sleep, so that's going to be interesting. So, but I might do an audible. I might not do the one that I originally picked for the week after, but I will say that like Winter Sleep should be a good discussion. But yeah, I definitely endorse this movie. I think we both do, and I think definitely watch this movie with like, you know, being prepared to push your mind, and also like, if you're into more like mindless material, this isn't for you. Like we'll have movies that you can probably watch, but this is definitely one that makes you think, makes you ponder. And those are the kind of movies I like. So, but yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up this week. So next time we'll do Winter Sleep, another thought-provoking film actually.
Turkish. We're trying to be a little more international.
We are pretty international, actually.
Yeah,
We've
we
done a
are.
lot of good. We did a lot of good international picks. We're not so like biased towards like the Hollywood elite, you know. Um,
The
the
elites. No, we're the people's pod.
Yeah, exactly. we're the people's pod. Yeah, sure. Like we gotta start doing the we gotta do Black Widow. You know, come on.
No, it is absolutely not. This is not mainstream nonsense.
Well, you said the people's pod. I mean, that's the people pod.
That's
People
not
want that.
That's not the people that we're trying to go towards, pod.
But yeah, it was this was a solid movie. But yeah, I think that's it for this week. So
Yeah, stay tuned to next week. And if you enjoyed our commentary on this, please like and subscribe to our channel. And let us know if you have any requests for future films you'd like us to review. Anyway, until next week, bye.